Hey guys, I got a really cool build to show, and this is Auto Herald of Thunder using the new unique rings called Storm Secrets. I'm gonna explain how everything works. Unfortunately, I believe the build requires certain expensive uniques to make this build really shine. And unfortunately, I have really bad luck and I'm completely broke. I was doing even 2 chaos recipes to get out of poverty, I guess. And this is not a finished build. I'm gonna continue doing this build and pushing as far as I can. Okay, so the build requires, I would say, an Inpulsa. An Inpulsa is like what, 4 results more. You don't need a 6 link but a 5 link at minimum. And the reason that is that the Herald of Thunder, even if it strikes over 7 times per second, can't really do the clear speed. You really need a way to pop enemies. A budget version is like a really budget version is like using Infernal Cry, but that's a fire damage and not, I mean, it's enough. Not sure how that would work in later maps. Probably would need more. Our item that is pretty expensive without Inpulsa is the Cluster Jewel with the Lone Messenger. The Lone Messenger basically gives you 100% more damage to Herald of any Herald hit effects, increases their buff effect by 50% or something like that, but also disables your other auras, and you can only have 1 Herald. So that I believe costs around 3 Exiles right now. So sadly I don't have either of those. The Lone Messenger I think is gonna be required if you want to push this build into red tier maps. You can do yellow tier maps without it, but Inpulsa or some kind of ways to pop enemies is mandatory. Inpulsa is basically the best option because you shock enemies and you do enemies explode dealing lightning damage, and that damage gets scaled by all the other things that you have, because Herald of Thunder is not really scaled by spell damage, so even flat damage to spells would not give anything to it. Only elemental damage, lighting damage like lighting pan, also the Crown of Inward Eye helps a lot if you're stacking mana. I'm gonna explain a bit more about the build. Another thing that can help a lot is Algor Mortis gloves, because for Herald of Thunder there aren't that many. This is, by the way, non-critical build. So for non-critical builds there aren't that many support gems that you can use. So I got Herald of Thunder linked with added lighting damage, which is currently level 19, elemental focus and lighting penetration, innervate, which is alright but not the best one, and then hypothermia. There's not really much else I can use, like empower, but that's not that great. Restoration you would not want, so there's really not much else. I guess you could use energy leech, but right now I have 0 energy because of agnostic, so I can't really use it. So hypothermia, and the way I'm guaranteeing chills is half cast when damage taken linked with the creeping frost, and that works very well. And that's why Algor Mortis is pretty amazing for this. Enemies in your chilling areas take 33% increased damage. This goes up to 35%. Yeah, so this is like 33% more damage, and that gives a lot of damage. So maybe I should have started with the Storm Secret rings and what they do and how they function. Sadly, rings don't have any life or mana or ES besides intelligence. They do give lighting rest, lighting damage, shock chance, and then the Herald of Thunder also creates a storm when you shock an enemy. The storm, from what I can tell, is basically, it just triggers Herald of Thunder when you shock. Normally Herald of Thunder only procs when you kill a shocked enemy, but with this you only need to shock an enemy and then it starts to proc Herald of Thunder. At least visually I did not see anything different. It may be that each time you shock it adds an extra bolt from Herald of Thunder, so that's not confirmed. This is just my guess. Also not entirely sure if I believe that or not. If each time you shock an enemy you add an extra ball, so it would sound like if you could shock enemy like let's say 20 times per second through other sources, you would add 20 hits per second to the Herald from the Herald of Thunder strikes. Is that how it works? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it just triggers the Herald of Thunder and that's it. I tried to check PoE for more information about the skills, and it just seems like it just triggers Herald of Thunder. I couldn't really find anything else regarding that. Another thing, these rings increase the frequency of bolts, of those Herald of Thunder bolts. And each time Herald of Thunder hits an enemy, you take 250 lightning damage. And I got 2 of these, so I take 500 lightning damage. This is of course mitigatable damage, and it is a hit, so you can trigger our effects that trigger when you get hit, and also you can use cast when damage taken. So I'm using cast when damage taken. By the way, this is a borrowed tablet. I could not even afford tablet. Well, now I guess I can afford tablet, but I got only 69 years now. After doing a bunch of years recipes and selling some stuff. This lightning damage from these rings are mitigatable by your lightning resistance, of course. Other sources that mitigate lightning damage. And the way I survive this damage, because my Herald of Thunder currently strikes every 0.13 seconds, so it's almost like 7.7 times per second. So that's quite a bit of damage taken every second. So in order to survive that, this is Elementalist. Elementalist, I think, is like a perfect fit for that. You can do other things, but you're gonna be 5 or 6 linking your Herald of Thunder. So you do want to reduce the mana cost as much as possible, or you're gonna have to use the common Calamity body armor, which sets your Herald mana reservation to 45%. My mana reservation is currently below that, so if you can avoid using that body armor and reduce the mana cost through other means, then even better. Yeah, that body armor could also be an optional, but then it would be much harder to get to make enemies pop. Elementalist works well for that because, well, Pendulum of Destruction is just whatever. Mastermind of Discord. This is the first node that I rushed for. You get basically lightning penetration, you get a more increased effect of Herald, and also reduced mana reservation for your Heralds. And I only have Herald of Thunder and Clarity right now. The Paragon of Calamity is so perfect for this. You get a life leech, and then because you keep hitting yourself with lightning damage, you get 40% increased damage to lighting, and also 8% reduced damage from lighting hits, and cannot take reflected elemental damage. So basically you can run every map except for no region map, I guess, at least the way I build. I am surviving because I have Mind Over Matter and I have Agnostic, and I have things that like this Battle Rose. 10% of damage taken gain as mana over 4 seconds when hit. I also have the Threshold Jewel. When you use any Warcry, you get the same effect. 10% of damage taken gain as mana over 4 seconds. If you have Warcry recently, Rallying Cry was changed, so it no longer provides you mana regen. So I was using Enduring Cry because it also gives a massive amount of life regen, but now I was experimenting with Infernal Cry linked with Second Wind to have 2 charges, because by default it had 8-second cooldown, and that's way too long for fast clear speed. And Infernal Cry is, I guess, the budget version if you cannot afford Inpulsa. And there are other items that could work for making enemies pop. I keep saying making enemies pop because I'm afraid YouTube is gonna demonetize if I say explode. So yeah, whatever, I'm gonna say explode. I'm actually not sure what would I take from the Uber Lab. The golems, I really don't want to mess with golems, but I guess you could get the golems, or you could refund from that and go for this one, which would guarantee shocks. I'm not sure if I will be able to guarantee shocks on big targets later on. Another thing, the Herald of Thunder requires you to shock. It's very important to distinguish this wording. Where is it? The Herald of Thunder itself cannot shock, so you have to use some other source to shock, and the shock is based on the lightning damage you do compared to monsters' HP. You do need to do a certain amount of damage with a single hit to shock. If it does too little, it doesn't even register as a shock, or at least it doesn't apply the shock. I'm not sure if that still procs the like the shock mechanic or not, but so far I had no issues with that. Once I shock something, it just keeps beaming, keeps killing enemies, and maintains itself for like how long is this? Like 6 seconds, I believe. Something like 6 seconds. So you don't need to shock every single enemy. You just need to shock once every 6 seconds. So for that, I got Shock Nova on manual gas with the cursor on hit. You can actually automate everything and just let enemies hit you to start the gas and damage taken. But I mean, why wait for enemies to hit you and almost kill you? So the Shock Nova also has inbuilt increased shock chance. So it has 20%. I also added, well, conductivity gives another 13 right now, and I also added inner weight, which gives another 20%. So actually my Shock Nova has now 84% shock chance. So if it's only one target, you may need to cast more than once, but it shouldn't be an issue. The Orb of Storm is terrible now. I used to use Orb of Storm all the time to trigger Elemental Overload, because we just drop it, it keeps beaming, but now it's so slow, it just did not feel good to use it at all on a single target. It's so much better to just cast a spell that has high shock chance, because Orb of Storm does not have an inbuilt shock chance, and you would need more links for that. So by the way, I'm gonna include path of building import code in the description, but it's not finished. Keep in mind, this is not finished. This is you're also gonna see some things that may not make sense, like Dynamo node. When you use a guard skill, you recover 20% of mana, but that doesn't work with trigger skills, and I have it on a trigger. I have cast and damage taken linked with Immortal Call, but it's not to trigger that. I took this node because I was experimenting, and it's also a good mana node, and I do need a lot of mana. So I also, like I said, I have cast and damage taken, Immortal Call, Shock Nova, another Shock Nova with critical strikes, and I chose Shock Nova because it has higher base critical strike chance. I also have Arc somewhere else. Okay, I don't have Arc. Right, I did remove the Arc. I thought I still had Arc. Well, another cast and damage taken, level 1, is linked with Creeping Frost and Wave of Conviction and Elemental Proliferation. The Proliferation is just to increase the chance to shock, I guess, and yeah, mostly. I'm not sure if the proliferation is needed or not, but it just increased the chance of shock. Wave of Conviction obviously applies the lighting exposure, and Creeping Frost is for the hypothermia and for the gloves, and it triggers all the time. And then I have Clarity still, because I don't have a Lone Messenger. Once I get that, I would have to get rid of Clarity and get a bit more mana regen, actually. Then I have Infernal Cry with the second win. Another one is Stone Golem, probably gonna get rid of it later, unless I get the Uberlab node. And then Flame Dash with Arcane Surge. Arcane Surge does not increase the damage for Herald of Thunder. Like I said, Herald of Thunder is not affected by spell damage. So the Arcane Surge is just to regen mana, that's it. Which is only 0.5%, so it's not really a big deal. As you can see, I don't really have many more sockets, but I need to upgrade so many more items, like the Badano. Obviously, any other 6 link would be better than this. The Crown of Inward Eye, I'm not sure how needed this is, but if you're gonna be using some kind of different explosions instead of Inpulsa, like chaos explosions or physical explosions, you're probably gonna want this if you're stacking mana, because you want to increase those explosions damage, and those explosions damage, I believe, is not affected by the heralds. I could be wrong. I haven't messed with those mechanics in a while, so I could be wrong. The heralds only give flat damage to attacks and spells, and explosions from the physical body armor or from obliterations are not spells or attacks, so probably would not be affected by herald. And in that case, we would be dealing much less damage and may not be efficient enough to clear the whole pack. But yeah, obliteration is one of the things that could kind of be like a budget build, but obliteration 1 gives absolutely no damage to this build, so you would have to have some beefy weapon. By the way, talking about weapons, lightning damage, elemental damage, and penetration. The flat lightning damage to spells does nothing. You do want mana regen in at least for this build if you're building Mind Over Matter and Agnostic, but you could get +1 to, maybe you could even get +2 to lightning spell skill gems. Yeah, and that would work well. You can also get lightning damage as extra chaos. You can also get Wizo. You can use Winter. You can also use what is it called, Crown of the Tyrant. That would give quite a bit of flat damage. You can also try to use the Sacrificial Heart for flat damage. Yoke of Suffering would not really work with that, because, well, it wouldn't, at least it should not allow the Herald of Thunder to shock, because by default it cannot shock. So this build, I think, has a lot of ways it can be built. If you don't use Mind Over Matter, things change drastically, but since I'm using so many uniques without any life, I need to kind of increase my effective life pool somehow. So Mind Over Matter works well, and Agnostic drains my mana to heal life, and that works pretty well, but I cannot sustain it. If I'm mapping, I have to use the Mana Flask. I even got the Mana Flask nodes. I should be getting the increased mana recovery rate belt, which would improve the, well, actually maybe life recovery belt, increased life recovery rate, because it would heal more from the Agnostic, but then again it would not help you recover mana, so maybe. Also, if you get Lone Messenger, you probably would not even care about the Watcher's Eye with Clarity, but if you cannot get Lone Messenger, maybe just to help sustain mana, try to get Watcher's Eye with increased mana recovery rate, I believe, while affected by Clarity. Another thing that you can use for explosions is Foreguard Body Armor, but I believe that is like 9 exalts, so it's even pricier. I'm not sure about that. There's also Exploding Mace, I believe, but maces don't really give damage to you for this. There's also, if I remember, synthesized weapons for explosions. Those things are from quite far back, so I can't really remember the fracture mods and synthesized mods, but I do remember that it used to have some explosions on weapons, so I'm gonna have to check those. Maybe that would be a cheaper option than Inpulsa. On the passive skill tree, you want life, you want mana regen, and of course you want damage. I'm still not sure what's the better way to build this, so I'm gonna be experimenting more and probably playing for at least 3 more days, maybe even more. I really want to get the Inpulsa and Lone Messenger and push this even to the zeros, because the single target can be, I think, pretty decent, but as soon as you get more than 1 target, if you get 2 targets, your DPS is cut in half. If you get 3 targets, it's cut in 3. So the more targets there are, the lower your DPS is going to be against single target. Also, against enemies with allies cannot die, you have to have some explosions or you're gonna suffer so much. So Infernal Cry is gonna be kind of a must if you can afford using that instead of Enduring Cry. Enduring Cry obviously generates endurance charges, and that's more defensive, but I can't really get any other explosions right now. Right, alternative classes could be, the crit version would be I think much more expensive, because Herald of Thunder does not have a base critical strike chance, so you would have to be either Assassin or Scion Assassin, and it's gonna be pricier. So yeah, I'm gonna make an updated video later. If you haven't subscribed and don't want to miss this update, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.